The night everything fell apart. Rachel Morrison gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The hospital parking lot stretched empty before her, lit only by flickering street lamps that cast long shadows across the pavement. She had just received the call that would shatter her world into a million pieces. Her mother's cancer treatment had been denied by insurance. The doctors gave Helen Morrison 3 months without the experimental therapy. With it, she might have years. But the cost was staggering. $200,000 up front, then $50,000 every month after that. Rachel made $30,000 a year working double shifts at the Harbor House restaurant while finishing her nursing degree at night. She would never have that kind of money. Not in 3 months. Not in 3 years. Rachel let the tears fall freely now, her chest heaving with sobs that seemed to tear through her entire body. She was 28 years old, and she was about to lose the only family she had left. Her father had died in a construction accident when she was 12, leaving behind nothing but debt and broken promises. Helen had raised Rachel alone, working 3 jobs to make sure her daughter never went hungry, never missed school, never felt like she was less than anyone else. Now it was Rachel's turn to save her mother. And she had no idea how. The business card. 2 weeks passed in a blur of phone calls, loan applications, and desperate prayers. Every door slammed shut in Rachel's face. Banks laughed at her credit score. Charitable organizations had waiting lists years long. Friends and neighbors contributed what they could, but it barely made a dent in the astronomical sum she needed. Rachel found herself working the dinner shift at the Harbor House in a daze, moving through the motions like a ghost. She delivered plates of lobster and filet mignon to people who spent more on a single meal than she made in a week. She smiled when they needed their wine glasses refilled. She thanked them for tips that would never be enough. That was when she remembered the business card. 3 months ago, a man had come into the restaurant alone. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes like steel and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Rachel's car and sat at table 7 without looking at the menu. When she approached to take his order, he barely glanced up from his phone. "The usual," he said. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know what that is," Rachel replied politely. He finally looked at her then, really looked at her, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition, though they had never met before. "You're new," he stated. "I've been here 6 months, actually. You might usually have a different server." He studied her for a long moment, then ordered the grilled salmon and a glass of scotch. When he left 2 hours later, he put down a $500 tip on a $60 check. Tucked underneath was his business card. Dominic Ashford. Chief Executive Officer. Ashford Technologies. Rachel had Googled him later that night. Tech billionaire. Forbes 400 list. 39 years old and never married. Known for his ruthless business tactics and his complete absence from the social scene despite his wealth. There were rumors, of course. Some said he was secretly married. Others claimed he was too damaged by his past to let anyone close. The tabloids called him the Ice King of Silicon Valley. Rachel had thrown the card in her purse and forgotten about it. Until now. The Tower. Ashford Technologies occupied the top 15 floors of the sleekest skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles. Rachel stood on the sidewalk staring up at it, feeling smaller than she ever had in her life. She wore her only professional outfit, a navy blue dress she had bought at a thrift store for job interviews and a pair of heels that pinched her feet. She almost turned around 3 times before she finally walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was all white marble and chrome, with a receptionist who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Rachel approached the desk with her heart hammering against her ribs. "I need to see Dominic Ashford," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have this." Rachel placed the business card on the counter. The woman's expression shifted slightly. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly for a moment, then hung up and gestured toward the elevators. Top floor. Someone will meet you there. The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever and no time at all. Rachel watched the numbers climb higher and higher, each one bringing her closer to a man she didn't know, asking for help she had no right to request. What was she even going to say? Please give me $200,000 because you left me a big tip once. The doors opened directly into a reception area that made the lobby look cheap by comparison. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city. A young man in an expensive suit greeted her with a professional smile. Miss Morrison? Mr. Ashford is expecting you. This way, please. Rachel followed him down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her mother's entire treatment. They stopped at a set of double doors made of dark wood. The young man knocked once, then opened them. Miss Rachel Morrison, he announced. The office beyond was enormous. More windows. More art. A desk the size of Rachel's entire apartment. And behind that desk, standing with his back to her as he looked out over the city, was Dominic Ashford. He turned slowly, and Rachel saw the exact moment recognition hit him. His eyes widened fractionally, and something like surprise crossed his carefully controlled features. The waitress from the Harbor House, he said. His voice was deep, smooth, with an edge that suggested he was used to being obeyed without question. My name is Rachel, she replied, lifting her chin. She might be desperate, but she still had her dignity. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Rachel. What brings you to my office, Rachel? The proposal. The words tumbled out of her in a rush. She told him about her mother, about the cancer, about the treatment that could save her life but would cost more money than Rachel would see in a decade. She tried to keep her voice from shaking, tried not to cry, but halfway through her carefully rehearsed speech, the tears came anyway. Dominic listened without interrupting. He moved from behind his desk to sit in one of the leather chairs near the window, gesturing for Rachel to take the seat across from him. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Why me? He asked finally. Because you gave me a $500 tip on a $60 check, Rachel said. Because maybe that means you're the kind of person who helps people. Because I've tried everywhere else, and you're my last hope. I'm not a charity, Dominic said, but there was no cruelty in his voice. Just honesty. I know. I'll pay you back. I don't know how or when, but I will. I promise. He stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Rachel watched him, this stranger who held her mother's life in his hands, and wondered what he was thinking. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. I'll cover your mother's treatment, he said finally. All of it. The upfront cost. The monthly payments. Whatever she needs for as long as she needs it. Rachel's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. What? But I have a condition. There it was. The catch. Rachel should have known there would be one. Nothing in life came free, especially not from billionaires. What condition? She asked, even though part of her was terrified of the answer. Dominic turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was intense, calculating, and something else she couldn't quite name. I need a fiancé. Fake, obviously. There's a business deal I'm trying to close with a very traditional company in Tokyo. They won't work with me because they think I'm too unstable, too unpredictable. They want to see that I'm settled. Family-oriented. They need to believe I have something to lose. Rachel stared at him. You want me to pretend to be engaged to you? For 8 months. That's how long it will take to finalize the deal. You'll live in my house. Attend events with me. Play the role of my devoted fiancé in public. In private, you'll have your own space. Your own life. I won't touch you unless absolutely necessary for appearances. And in exchange, you'll pay for my mother's treatment? Every penny. Plus $100,000 for you at the end of the 8 months. Consider it payment for your time. Rachel's mind was spinning. It sounded insane. Like something out of a movie. But the alternative was watching her mother die, and she couldn't do that. She wouldn't. When would this start? She asked. Immediately. I need you to move into my house by the end of the week. We'll announce our engagement next month. What if people don't believe us? They'll believe us. I'll make sure of it. He pulled a folder from his desk and handed it to her. This is the contract. Read it carefully. Have a lawyer look at it if you want. But I need your answer by tomorrow. Rachel took the folder with trembling hands. Why me? You could hire an actress. Someone trained for this. For the first time since she had entered his office, Dominic's expression softened slightly. Because when you waited on me 3 months ago, you looked at me like I was just another person. Not the Ice King. Not a billionaire. Just a man ordering dinner. Do you know how rare that is? Rachel didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and stood to leave. Rachel, Dominic called as she reached the door. She turned back to look at him. I'm not a good man. I'm not doing this out of kindness. I need something from you, and you need something from me. This is a business transaction. Nothing more. Don't make the mistake of thinking otherwise. I understand, Rachel said. But as she left his office and rode the elevator back down to ground level, she couldn't shake the feeling that Dominic Ashford was lying. Not about the deal or the terms or the business arrangement. He was lying about what this really meant to him. And somehow, that terrified her more than anything else. Moving day. The mansion in Beverly Hills looked like something out of a dream. Or a nightmare, depending on how Rachel looked at it. 3 stories of white stone and glass, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens and a gate that required a security code to enter. As the moving truck pulled up the circular driveway, Rachel felt her stomach twist into knots. She didn't have much to move. A few suitcases of clothes, some books, her laptop, and a box of photographs. Everything she owned fit in the back of her beat-up Honda. It felt pathetic compared to the opulence surrounding her. Dominic met her at the front door. He wore jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more casual than she had ever seen him. Somehow, it made him more intimidating, not less. Without the armor of a business suit, she could see the definition of his shoulders, the strength in his forearms, the way he moved with the confidence of a man who had never doubted himself. Welcome home, he said, and the word felt strange coming from his mouth. A housekeeper named Patricia appeared to help with Rachel's bags. She was a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a knowing smile. Your room is ready, dear. 2nd floor, East Wing. You'll have plenty of privacy. Rachel followed Patricia up a sweeping staircase that belonged in a palace. The hallway seemed to stretch forever, lined with doors that led to rooms Rachel couldn't imagine. When Patricia finally stopped and opened a door, Rachel gasped. The bedroom was bigger than her entire apartment had been. A king-size bed dominated the space, covered in soft white linens. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. There was a sitting area with a fireplace, a walk-in closet the size of her old bedroom, and a bathroom that looked like a spa. Mr. Ashford wanted you to be comfortable, Patricia said. His suite is on the opposite end of the hall. You won't be disturbed. After Patricia left, Rachel stood in the center of the room and tried to process what her life had become. Just 48 hours ago, she had been serving tables and studying for exams in her tiny studio apartment. Now she lived in a mansion with a man she barely knew, preparing to lie to the entire world about being in love with him. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Her mother's first treatment was scheduled for tomorrow morning. The payment had already been processed in full. Rachel sat on the edge of the expensive bed and cried tears of relief and terror all mixed together. The rules that evening, Dominic called her down to his study. It was a room of dark wood and leather, filled with books that looked actually read rather than just decorative. He sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents on his computer. "Sit," he said without looking up. Rachel took the chair across from him and waited. She was getting used to his abrupt manner, the way he treated every interaction like a business meeting. After a few minutes, he closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "We need to establish some ground rules," he began. "First, in public, you'll refer to me as Dom. It sounds more intimate than Dominic. You'll hold my hand. You'll lean into me when we talk. You'll laugh at my jokes even when they're not funny." "Do you make jokes?" Rachel asked before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Rarely. But the point stands. We need to convince people this is real. That means physical affection. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to sell the illusion." "I understand. Second, you'll need new clothes. Patricia has the number of a personal shopper who will come tomorrow. Get whatever you need. Formal wear, casual wear, jewelry, shoes. Don't worry about the cost." Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "I don't need that much." "Yes, you do. You'll be attending galas, charity events, business dinners. You need to look the part of my fiancé, not a college student." The words stung, even though he hadn't meant them cruelly. He was just stating facts. Rachel Morrison from Riverside didn't belong in Dominic Ashford's world, and they both knew it. "Third," he continued, "your mother can never know this is fake. As far as she's concerned, we met, fell in love, and got engaged. Can you do that?" Rachel thought about her mother, lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. Helen Morrison was sharp as a tack despite the cancer. She would ask questions. She would want to know everything about the man her daughter was supposedly marrying. "I can do it," Rachel said. "But she'll want to meet you. Then I'll meet her. We'll visit her together this week. I'll be charming. I'll hold your hand. I'll act like a man in love." He said it so matter-of-factly, like love was just another role to play. "Is that easy for you?" Rachel asked. "Pretending to feel things you don't?" Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. "Yes. I've had a lot of practice. The first test." 3 days later, Rachel stood in front of her mirror wearing a dress that cost more than 3 months of her old rent. It was deep emerald green, fitted to her curves in a way that made her feel both beautiful and exposed. The personal shopper had transformed her wardrobe completely. Now her closet was filled with designer labels and shoes that didn't pinch her feet. Tonight was their first public appearance together. A charity gala for children's hospitals. Dominic had explained that the event would be crawling with photographers and reporters. By tomorrow morning, their relationship would be headline news. A knock on her door made her jump. "Come in," she called. Dominic entered, and Rachel's breath caught. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look like he had stepped out of a magazine spread. His dark hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his features. For a moment, they just stared at each other. "You look beautiful," he said finally, and it didn't sound like a line. It sounded true. "Thank you. You look nice too." He crossed the room and pulled a small box from his pocket. "Before we go, you need this." Inside the box was a ring that made Rachel's eyes water. A flawless diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum. It caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. "Dominic, this is too much," she whispered. "It needs to look real." He took the ring from the box and reached for her left hand. His fingers were warm as they wrapped around hers. He slid the ring onto her finger slowly, and Rachel felt her heart start to race. "Perfect fit," he murmured, still holding her hand. They stood there for a moment too long, hands clasped, standing close enough that Rachel could smell his cologne. Something woodsy and expensive. Something that made her want to lean in closer. Dominic cleared his throat and stepped back. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." Under the spotlight. The gala was held at a historic hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Valets in white gloves opened the car door, and camera flashes exploded like fireworks as Dominic helped Rachel out of the limousine. She froze, overwhelmed by the noise and the lights and the shouted questions. "Mr. Ashford, who is your date?" "Dominic, look this way." "Is this your girlfriend?" Dominic placed his hand on the small of Rachel's back, the touch gentle but grounding. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Just smile and stay close to me. I've got you." They walked the red carpet together, and Rachel tried to remember everything Patricia had taught her. Shoulders back. Chin up. Small smile. Don't squint at the cameras. Dominic kept his hand on her back the entire time, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. Inside the ballroom, things calmed down slightly. The space was decorated with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers. Women in glittering gowns glided past on the arms of men in tuxedos. Everyone looked like they belonged. Rachel felt like an imposter. "Dominic Ashford, as I live and breathe." A booming voice cut through the crowd. A large man with silver hair and a red face approached them with a drink in each hand. "I heard rumors you were finally socializing again. Didn't believe them until now." "Richard," Dominic said with what might have been warmth. "Good to see you. This is Rachel Morrison. My fiancée." The word sent a jolt through Rachel's system. This was it. The lie was officially live. Richard's eyebrows shot up. "Fiancé? Well, I'll be. Congratulations to you both. How long have you been together?" 6 months, Dominic said smoothly, the number they had agreed on. "We kept it quiet. Rachel values her privacy. Smart girl. The press can be vultures." Richard turned his attention to Rachel. "How did you two meet?" Rachel's mind went blank. They hadn't discussed this part. What was she supposed to say? "She was my waitress," Dominic said, sliding his arm around her waist and pulling her against his side. "I came into the restaurant where she worked, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. I went back every week for 3 months before I finally got the courage to ask her out." Rachel stared at him. The story was partially true, but he had embellished it with details that made it sound romantic. Sweet, even. And the way he looked at her as he told it, his eyes soft and his smile gentle, made her almost believe him herself. "Love at first sight," Richard chuckled. "Never thought I'd see the day." "Well, she's a beauty, Dominic. You're a lucky man." "I know," Dominic replied, and squeezed Rachel's waist. Cracks in the ice. As the evening wore on, Rachel found herself relaxing slightly. Dominic introduced her to dozens of people, and each time, he kept his hand on her. Sometimes her waist. Sometimes the small of her back. Once, when they were seated for dinner, he rested his palm on her knee under the table. The touch was innocent but intimate, and it made Rachel hyper-aware of every breath he took. She watched him work the room, charming business associates and potential clients with the same ease he brought to everything. But she also noticed the moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The way his jaw tightened when certain people approached. The subtle tension in his shoulders that never fully released. During dessert, a woman in a red dress stopped by their table. She was stunning, with platinum blonde hair and legs that went on forever. "Dominic," she purred. "I heard you were here with a date. Had to see it for myself." "Vanessa." Dominic's voice went cold. This is Rachel, my fiancée. Rachel, this is Vanessa Price. We used to work together. Used to work together. The words were neutral, but the energy between them was anything but. Vanessa's eyes raked over Rachel with thinly veiled contempt. Fiancé, Vanessa repeated. How sudden. I saw you just 2 months ago, and you said you'd never get married. What changed? I met the right person, Dominic said flatly. Vanessa laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Right. Well, enjoy it while it lasts, sweetie, she said to Rachel. Dominic gets bored easily. Trust me, I know. Before Rachel could respond, Dominic stood abruptly. We're leaving. Now. He practically dragged Rachel out of the ballroom, his grip on her hand almost painful. They didn't speak until they were in the back of the limousine, the privacy screen raised between them and the driver. I'm sorry, Dominic said, his voice rough. That was inappropriate. Who was she really? Rachel asked. Someone I made the mistake of getting involved with 3 years ago. She thought it would lead to more. It didn't. She's held a grudge ever since. Rachel studied his profile in the dim light. His jaw was clenched tight, and he stared out the window like he could see through the darkened glass. Did you love her? No. The answer was immediate and certain. I've never loved anyone. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Rachel wanted to ask why. She wanted to know what had happened to make him so closed off, so determined to keep everyone at arm's length. But before she could find the courage, Dominic turned to face her. You did well tonight, he said. Everyone believed us. The story will be everywhere by morning. The Japanese investors will see it. This is working exactly as planned. Right, Rachel said quietly. As planned. But as they drove through the city streets in silence, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them tonight. Something neither of them had planned for. A glimpse behind the mask. The next morning, Rachel woke to find her face on the cover of 3 different gossip magazines. Tech Billionaire's Secret Romance. The Ice King finally melts. Who is the mystery woman who captured Dominic Ashford's heart? She was eating breakfast in the kitchen when Dominic appeared, already dressed in a suit despite it being Saturday. He poured himself coffee and sat across from her at the island. We're trending on social media, he said, scrolling through his phone. Over 1 million mentions. The press conference I'm doing Monday will seal it. Press conference? Rachel's stomach dropped. You didn't mention a press conference. I'm announcing a major partnership with a Japanese tech firm. I'll mention you. Maybe bring you up on stage. It'll be good exposure. Rachel set down her toast, suddenly not hungry. Dominic, I'm not sure I can do that. All those cameras and questions. He looked up from his phone, and for the first time, she saw something like concern in his eyes. You'll be fine. Just stand next to me and smile. You won't have to say anything. That's not the point. This is getting so big so fast. What if someone digs into my background? What if they find out about my mother, about the timing? They won't find anything we don't want them to find. I have a PR team handling your image. As far as the world knows, you're a nursing student from a middle-class family who captured my heart. End of story. Rachel wanted to argue, but what was the point? She had agreed to this. She had signed the contract. Her mother's treatment was already underway, the first round of chemotherapy showing promising results. She couldn't back out now. Okay, she said. I'll do the press conference. Dominic nodded and returned to his phone. The moment of connection was gone, replaced by his usual professional distance. But as Rachel watched him, she noticed something. His hand shook slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. Just a tremor, barely visible, but it was there. Are you all right? She asked. Fine. The word was clipped. You don't look fine. You look tired. I didn't sleep well. Nightmares? His head snapped up, his eyes sharp. What makes you say that? Rachel shrugged. Lucky guess. You have shadows under your eyes. You're drinking coffee at 8 in the morning on a Saturday when you don't have anywhere to be. And your hand is shaking. Dominic set down his cup carefully. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and Rachel wondered if she had crossed a line. Then, to her surprise, he spoke. I have insomnia. Have had it for years. Some nights are worse than others. Last night was bad. Because of Vanessa? No. Because of you. The confession hung between them like a live wire. Rachel's heart started to pound. What do you mean? Dominic stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need to go to the office. I'll be back tonight. Dominic, wait. But he was already gone, leaving Rachel alone in the enormous kitchen with more questions than answers. She touched the engagement ring on her finger, feeling the weight of it. The weight of everything. What had he meant, because of her? And why did the thought of him lying awake thinking about her make her chest feel tight and warm at the same time? The hospital visit. That afternoon, Rachel drove to the hospital alone. Her mother was sitting up in bed when she arrived, looking better than she had in months. The first round of treatment was working. Helen's color was better, and she had more energy. She smiled when Rachel walked in. There's my girl, Helen said. Come here, let me look at you. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's hand. Helen's eyes immediately went to the ring, and her mouth fell open. Rachel Morrison, is that what I think it is? Rachel's throat went tight. This was the moment she had been dreading. Lying to strangers was one thing. Lying to her mother was something else entirely. Mom, I wanted to tell you in person. I'm engaged. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Engaged? To who? When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me? The questions came rapid fire, and Rachel did her best to answer them with the story she and Dominic had crafted. They had met 6 months ago. He had pursued her. She had fallen in love. He had proposed last week in a private moment at home. Helen listened to it all with a mixture of joy and confusion. But sweetheart, how did you afford this treatment? Did he pay for it? He wanted to help, Rachel said carefully. He has the means, and he loves me. He said he couldn't stand by and watch you suffer when he could do something about it. It wasn't entirely a lie. Dominic was paying for the treatment. He just didn't love her. I want to meet him, Helen said firmly. I'm not letting my daughter marry a man I've never even met. He's coming tomorrow, Rachel promised. He wanted to give you time to rest after the treatment. That night, Rachel texted Dominic. My mom wants to meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Hospital room 412. Please be convincing. His response came 5 minutes later. I'll be there. Wear the blue dress. We should look coordinated. Rachel stared at the message. Wear the blue dress. Such a small detail, but it showed he was thinking about every aspect of the performance. Nothing was left to chance with Dominic Ashford. She tried to sleep but couldn't. She kept thinking about what he had said that morning. Because of you. What did that mean? Was she making him uncomfortable? Was he regretting their arrangement? Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She got out of bed and opened her door a crack. Dominic was walking toward his room, still dressed in the clothes he had worn that morning. He looked exhausted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Their eyes met across the hall. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Dominic spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Can't sleep either? Too much on my mind, Rachel admitted. He walked slowly toward her, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. Your mother. Tomorrow. Are you nervous? Terrified? Don't be. I'm good at this. At pretending. I know. That's what worries me. Dominic frowned. What do you mean? Rachel stepped out into the hallway, pulling her robe tighter around herself. You're so good at pretending that sometimes I can't tell what's real. Like at the gala, when you told Richard how we met. For a second, I actually believed you felt that way. That you had noticed me, wanted me. And then I remembered it's all just a performance. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. He took a step closer, close enough that Rachel had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. What if I told you that part was true? He said softly. Rachel's breath caught. What? I did notice you that first night at the restaurant. I went back 3 more times over the next month hoping you'd be working. And when you walked into my office asking for help, I couldn't believe my luck. Finally, an excuse to keep you close. You're lying, Rachel whispered, but her voice shook with uncertainty. Am I? He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. You think I offer fake engagement deals to every desperate woman who walks through my door? You think I lose sleep over business arrangements? Rachel couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. His hand was still on her face, warm and gentle, and his eyes were searching hers like he was looking for something he desperately needed to find. This is just the champagne talking, she said, trying to inject some reality into the moment. Or exhaustion. You don't mean this. I never drink champagne. And I'm exhausted because I've been lying to myself for weeks about what I actually want. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. What I've wanted since the moment you sat down in my office and cried for your mother. You're so real, Rachel. So genuine. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Dominic. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking you for anything beyond what we agreed. I just needed you to know that for me, this stopped being fake about 2 days in. Before Rachel could process what was happening, Dominic leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. It was chaste, almost tender, but it sent electricity racing through her entire body. Then he pulled back, dropped his hand, and walked to his room without another word. Rachel stood frozen in the hallway long after his door clicked shut, her fingers pressed to the spot where he had kissed her, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Everything had just changed. And she had no idea what to do about it, meeting the mother. Rachel changed outfits 3 times before settling on the blue dress Dominic had suggested. It was a soft periwinkle color that brought out her eyes, casual enough for a hospital visit but nice enough to make a good impression. She paired it with simple jewelry and minimal makeup. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked polished, put together, like she belonged in Dominic's world. She didn't feel that way inside. Dominic picked her up at 1:30, driving them to the hospital in his Aston Martin. He wore slacks and a button-down shirt, no tie, with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. It was the most casual she had seen him outside the house, and somehow it made him even more attractive. More human. They hadn't spoken about what happened in the hallway last night. When Rachel came down for breakfast that morning, Dominic was already gone. He had left a note on the counter, "Wear the blue dress. I'll pick you up at 1:30. We've got this." Now, sitting in the car beside him, Rachel couldn't stand the silence anymore. About last night. Don't, Dominic said quietly, his eyes on the road. Let's just focus on today. Your mother needs to believe this is real. That's all that matters right now. Rachel wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers, to understand what he had meant by all those things he said. But he was right. Today was about her mother. Everything else could wait. They arrived at the hospital and made their way to Helen's room. Rachel's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. Dominic covered her hand with his own, squeezing gently. "Hey," he said softly. "I've got this. Trust me." Then he opened the door, and the performance began. Helen Morrison sat propped up in her hospital bed, wearing a pink robe and the kind of expectant expression only mothers can manage. Her eyes went immediately to Dominic, assessing him with the thoroughness of someone who had spent 28 years protecting her daughter. "Mom," Rachel said, her voice only slightly shaky. "This is Dominic." "Dominic, this is my mother, Helen." Dominic crossed the room with easy confidence and took Helen's hand gently. "Mrs. Morrison, it's an honor to finally meet you. Rachel talks about you constantly." "Does she now?" Helen's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Well, don't believe everything she says. I'm sure she's told you all my embarrassing stories. Only the good ones." Dominic pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed, and Rachel was struck by how natural he looked. How genuine. Like the time you worked 3 jobs to pay for her school books. Or when you taught her to drive in a parking lot at midnight because that was the only time you both had free. Helen's expression softened. "She told you about that?" "She tells me everything. Your daughter is the most devoted person I've ever met. She gets that from you." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. He was saying all the right things, but more than that, he seemed to mean them. The way he looked at Helen, with respect and something like admiration, wasn't an act. At least, Rachel didn't think it was. "So how did you two really meet?" Helen asked, getting straight to the point. "And don't give me some fairy tale. I want the truth." Dominic glanced at Rachel, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. A question, maybe. Or a challenge. Then he turned back to Helen and spoke. "I came into the restaurant where Rachel was working. I was having the worst day of my life. My father had just died." He paused, and Rachel's breath caught. She hadn't known that. He had never mentioned his father. "I sat at her table and barely looked at her. I was drowning in my own misery. But Rachel, she didn't treat me like a customer. She sat down and asked if I was okay." Rachel's mind raced. That wasn't what had happened. Or was it? She tried to remember that night, but it felt like a lifetime ago. "She told me that sometimes the only thing that helps is a good meal and a friendly ear," Dominic continued. "So I ordered food I didn't want and talked to a stranger about things I'd never told anyone. When I left, I gave her my card and said if she ever needed anything, to call me. I never expected to see her again." Helen was listening intently now, her earlier skepticism fading. 3 months later, she walked into my office. At first, I thought she was there for a job. Then she told me about you. About the cancer. About how terrified she was of losing you." Dominic's voice dropped lower, and Rachel saw his throat work as he swallowed. "And I knew I had to help. Not because I owed her. But because anyone who loves that fiercely, who fights that hard for someone else, is someone worth knowing." The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. Rachel stared at Dominic, trying to figure out how much of what he was saying was true and how much was fiction. His face gave nothing away. "We started spending time together while the treatment was getting set up," he said. "Long conversations about everything and nothing. She made me laugh for the first time since my father died. She made me feel human again. So yes, Mrs. Morrison, maybe this happened quickly. But when you know, you know." Helen was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "You really love my daughter?" Dominic stood and walked to where Rachel was standing by the window. He took her hand and laced their fingers together. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." And the terrifying thing was, when Rachel looked into his eyes, she almost believed him. The cracks begin to show. The visit with Helen went better than Rachel could have hoped. By the time they left, her mother was convinced that Dominic was the perfect man for her daughter. She even made jokes about wedding plans and grandchildren, which made Dominic smile in a way that seemed almost genuine. But as soon as they got back in the car, the warmth disappeared. Dominic was silent as he drove, his jaw tight and his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Rachel watched him out of the corner of her eye, confused by the sudden shift. "That went well," she ventured. "Yes. My mom really likes you." "Good." Rachel turned to face him fully. "What's wrong?" "You were perfect in there." She believed every word. "I said what needed to be said." "Was any of it true? About your father? About the restaurant?" Dominic's hands tightened on the wheel. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. You just told my dying mother a story about how we fell in love, and I don't even know which parts were real and which parts you made up. That's the whole point, Rachel." Dominic's voice rose for the first time since she had known him. "You're not supposed to know. Nobody is. That's what makes it work." He pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a side street. For a moment, he just sat there, breathing hard, staring straight ahead. Then he spoke, his voice raw. "My father did die 3 months before I met you. Heart attack in his office. I found him." He swallowed hard. "I did go to that restaurant having the worst day of my life. You didn't sit down and talk to me. But you smiled when you brought my water. Just a small smile, nothing special. Except it was the first time anyone had smiled at me in weeks, like I was a person instead of a problem to be solved." Rachel felt her heart clench. "Dominic. So yes, some of it was true. Some of it I wish was true. And some of it I made up because your mother needed to hear a love story and I'm good at telling people what they need to hear." He finally turned to look at her, and his eyes were dark with emotion. "Does that answer your question?" "I'm sorry about your father," Rachel said softly. "Don't. I don't want your pity. It's not pity. It's compassion. There's a difference." He laughed bitterly. "Is there?" Rachel reached across the console and took his hand. He stiffened but didn't pull away. "Thank you for what you did in there. For making my mother happy. I know this is all fake, but to her, it's real. And that means everything." Dominic looked down at their joined hands. "What if it's not entirely fake?" he asked quietly. Before Rachel could respond, his phone rang. He pulled his hand away to answer it, his expression shifting back to business mode instantly. "Ashford." "Yes." "When?" "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and put the car in gear. "I have to go to the office. Emergency with the Tokyo deal. I'll drop you at the house." Just like that, the moment was gone. Dominic drove in silence, and Rachel watched the city blur past outside her window. She touched the spot where he had held her hand, still feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. Nothing about this arrangement was going according to plan. And the scariest part was, Rachel wasn't sure she wanted it to anymore. The Tokyo investors. 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Dominic was gone most days, working impossibly long hours to finalize the Tokyo deal. When he was home, he was distant but not cold. They had dinner together most nights, making small talk about their days. Sometimes he asked about her mother, who was responding well to treatment. Sometimes she asked about his work, and he would give vague answers about contracts and negotiations. They didn't talk about what he had said in the car. They didn't talk about the kiss on her forehead or the confession in the hallway. It was like they had silently agreed to pretend those moments never happened. But Rachel couldn't stop thinking about them. She found herself watching Dominic when he didn't know she was looking. The way he rubbed his temples when he was stressed. The way he took his coffee black with no sugar. The way he sometimes stood at the windows late at night, staring out at the city with an expression of such profound loneliness that it made her chest ache. One evening, Patricia mentioned that the Tokyo investors were coming to Los Angeles for a final meeting. "Mr. Ashford wants you there," she said. "It's at the house, Saturday night. Dinner for 6. Rachel's stomach dropped. "He wants me to play hostess." "He wants you to be his fiancée," Patricia corrected gently. "These people need to believe you two are the real thing. Mr. Ashford says this dinner will make or break the deal." Saturday arrived too quickly. Rachel spent the entire day preparing with Patricia's help. They reviewed names and backgrounds of the 3 investors who were coming. They planned the menu, the seating arrangement, the conversation topics. By the time evening rolled around, Rachel felt like she was preparing for an exam she couldn't afford to fail. Dominic appeared at 6 o'clock wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He looked at Rachel in her cocktail dress and nodded approval. "You look perfect. Remember, we're happy. In love. Planning a spring wedding." "I remember." He hesitated, then stepped closer and adjusted the necklace she was wearing. His fingers brushed against her collarbone, and Rachel shivered. "Hey," he said softly. "You're going to be great. Just be yourself." "Myself isn't someone who belongs at dinner parties with Japanese billionaires. Yourself is exactly who should be here. Don't let them intimidate you." His hands lingered on her shoulders. "I'll be right beside you the whole time." The doorbell rang. Dominic took a deep breath, then laced his fingers through Rachel's. Show time. The performance of a lifetime. The 3 investors from Tokyo were polite, formal, and intensely observant. They were led by a man named Takeshi Yamamoto, who had built his tech empire from nothing and now controlled half of Asia's semiconductor market. He was in his 60s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dinner started smoothly. The food was excellent. The wine flowed freely. Dominic was charming without being fake, professional without being cold. And Rachel found herself actually enjoying the conversation. Takeshi asked about her nursing studies, seeming genuinely interested. His wife, Keiko, wanted to know how Dominic had proposed. "It was nothing fancy," Rachel said, the lie coming easier now. "We were at home, just the 2 of us. He made dinner, which is unusual. Because he's a terrible cook." Dominic laughed. "That's true. I burned the salmon." "You burned everything," Rachel continued, smiling. The smoke alarm went off. "We opened all the windows. And while we were standing in the kitchen surrounded by smoke and ruined food, he just looked at me and said, 'Marry me.'" "What did you say?" Keiko asked, leaning forward. Rachel turned to look at Dominic, and found him already watching her. "I said yes. Obviously." Something passed between them in that moment. Something real and electric and terrifying. Dominic's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. Takeshi cleared his throat. "Mr. Ashford, I must confess something. When I first heard you were engaged, I was skeptical. Your reputation suggests you are a man who does not do anything without calculating the benefit. I wondered if this relationship was simply another business strategy." Rachel felt her heart stop. Beside her, Dominic went very still. "But watching you tonight," Takeshi continued, "I see that I was wrong. The way you look at her is not calculation. It is something much rarer in our world. It is genuine feeling." He raised his wine glass. "To Dominic and Rachel. May your partnership in life be as successful as I believe our partnership in business will be." Everyone drank. Dominic's hand was still gripping Rachel's under the table, so tight it almost hurt. After dessert, the investors prepared to leave. Takeshi shook Dominic's hand firmly. "We will finalize the contracts Monday morning. Congratulations, Mr. Ashford. You have built something remarkable. Both in business and in life. When the door finally closed behind them, Dominic leaned against it and let out a long breath. We did it. The deal is done. Rachel should have felt relieved. Victorious, even. This was what they had been working toward. But all she felt was empty. So that's it then, she said. You got what you needed. Dominic looked at her sharply. Rachel, I should go check on the kitchen. Make sure Patricia doesn't need help cleaning up. She turned away, but Dominic caught her wrist. Wait. Please. For what? The performance is over, Dominic. We convinced them. Mission accomplished. That's not what he stopped, frustration flashing across his face. Why are you angry? I'm not angry. I'm just tired of pretending. Pretending what? That any of this means anything. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. You tell me it's fake, then you say things that make it sound real. You keep your distance, then you look at me like I'm the only person in the world. I don't know what's true anymore. I don't even know what you want from me beyond playing a part. Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled her closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. I want this, he said, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and hungry and full of weeks of pent-up tension. Rachel gasped against his mouth, and he deepened the kiss, backing her against the wall. His body pressed against hers, solid and warm, and Rachel's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed that this was a mistake. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. That's what I want, he whispered. But I don't know how to have it without ruining everything. The breaking point: they didn't talk about the kiss. The next morning, Dominic was gone before Rachel woke up, leaving only a text, signing the Tokyo contracts today. Don't wait up. He didn't come home that night. Or the next. Rachel told herself it was fine. This was the deal. He had his business. She had her mother. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The fact that she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had kissed her was irrelevant. On the third day, Patricia mentioned that Dominic had been sleeping at his downtown office. He does that sometimes when he's working on something big, she said. Don't take it personally, dear. But Rachel did take it personally. Because she knew what this was. He was running. Again, she was in her room that evening when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Rachel Morrison? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Jennifer Woods from the Los Angeles Times. I'm working on a story about your engagement to Dominic Ashford, and I was hoping you could comment on some information that's come to light. Rachel's blood ran cold. What information? We have documents showing that large payments were made to Cedars-Sinai Hospital the same week you and Mr. Ashford supposedly got engaged. We also have sources claiming you approached him for financial help. Some people are suggesting this relationship might not be entirely genuine. The world tilted. Rachel sat down heavily on her bed. I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Morrison, if this is some kind of arrangement between you and Mr. Ashford, the public has a right to know. Is he paying you to pretend to be his fiancée? This interview is over. Rachel hung up with shaking hands. It took her 3 tries to dial Dominic's number. He answered on the first ring. Rachel? What's wrong? A reporter just called. Jennifer Woods from the Los Angeles Times. Dominic, she knows. About the hospital payments. About me coming to you for help. She's going to expose us. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll handle it. How? She has documents. Sources. This is going to destroy your Tokyo deal. Everything we worked for. I said I'll handle it. His voice was steel. Stay at the house. Don't talk to anyone. I'm on my way. He arrived an hour later, and Rachel had never seen him look so fierce. He paced the living room like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear as he barked orders at what sounded like his entire legal team. I don't care what it costs. I want to know who leaked those documents. I want to know who her sources are. And I want it buried. He hung up and turned to Rachel. This is Vanessa. It has to be. She's the only one who would have known to look into the timing. What do? We get ahead of it. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a press conference. I'm going to tell them everything. Rachel felt the floor drop out from under her. Everything? The truth. That you came to me for help. That I agreed to pay for your mother's treatment. That the engagement was initially a business arrangement. He ran a hand through his hair. And that somewhere along the way, it became real. Dominic, you can't. The Tokyo deal. Fuck the Tokyo deal. He shouted it, startling them both. He took a breath, visibly trying to calm himself. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep lying. Not about this. Not about you. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. You're going to lose everything. Your reputation. Your business partnerships. All because of me. Dominic crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. I don't care. None of it matters if I lose you. You never had me. This was fake, remember? He pulled back just enough to look down at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. It stopped being fake the moment you walked into my office. I just wasn't brave enough to admit it until now. You're the bravest person I know. No. He cupped her face gently. You are. You stood in front of a stranger and begged for help to save your mother. You moved into my house knowing this could blow up in your face at any second. You smiled at investors and reporters and social climbers, all while terrified they'd see through the lie. You're extraordinary, Rachel Morrison. And I've been in love with you since that first night at the restaurant, even though I didn't realize it until you were living under my roof. Rachel couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. All she could do was stare at this man who had just confessed his love while his entire world was crumbling around him. I know this complicates things, Dominic continued. I know the last thing you probably want is to actually be in a relationship with me after everything I've put you through. But if there's even a chance that you might feel something for me too, then maybe this disaster is actually a blessing. Because at least it's honest. Rachel thought about the past 2 months. The way her heart raced every time he entered a room. The way she found excuses to stay up late just to talk to him. The way his rare smiles felt like a gift she wanted to treasure. The way she had lain awake every night since he kissed her, wondering what it would be like to really be loved by Dominic Ashford. I fell for you somewhere between the first lie and the last truth, she whispered. I don't even know when it happened. But yes, Dominic. I feel something for you. I feel everything for you. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he was smiling. Really smiling. Then let them print their stories. Let the world know the truth. I don't care anymore. The truth will set you free. The press conference the next morning was chaos. Dominic stood at a podium in the lobby of Ashford Technologies, with Rachel beside him. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Dominic raised his hand for silence. Thank you all for coming. I have a statement to make regarding my relationship with Rachel Morrison. He told them everything. About her mother's illness. About Rachel coming to him for help. About the arrangement they had made. The room erupted with more shouted questions, but Dominic spoke over them. I know how this looks. And yes, initially, this was a business arrangement. I needed to appear settled to close a deal with traditional investors. Rachel needed money for her mother's medical treatment. We helped each other. He paused and turned to look at Rachel, taking her hand.